Hello, Scott. Hello, Jamie.
Hello.
Hey, Scott, thank you. Steve. Happy Monday. Here we are again, another edition of the office hours. And look at that date, 13th. It seems like November just got here, and here we are almost halfway done with November, kind of in turbo mode here. Or I guess I'm showing my age. The older you get, the faster time goes and all that good stuff. So before we get into the good stuff, just want to take a quick second here to make the lawyers happy so nobody has any heart attacks. So keep in mind, everybody, everything that we share with you here today or in any of our webinars is strictly for educational purposes only. Please do not misconstrue anything that we say as a solicitation to buy or sell stocks, bonds, equities, anything. If you need investment advice, please seek out a registered investment advisor, RIA, or there's plenty of other registered type individuals out there. So if you need investment advice, seek out a licensed professional to help you with that. Okay. Now, quick word to the people who might be joining us for the first time. For you regular attendees, bear with me. Just want everybody to know, not only do we have this fantastic basically all alone in its class scanning software, but we've also built quite the vibrant community around it. That all kind of begins with Barry's Trading Room, hosted by Barry Anderson. Every market day, I believe he opens up the room 30 minutes before the open, and the best thing about it is it's free. You don't even have to be a TI subscriber to get in there and benefit from the Trade Ideas Trading Room. Now, Barry's been pushing the buttons for a very long time. He shares his trading technique and shows everyone how he uses the software. And there's, it's pretty popular because there's usually about 400 to 500 people in there per day. So if you're looking for a place to go, get feedback from other people, check it out. Of course, myself and Steve host Monday's office hours. Steve takes the helm tomorrow and Tuesdays for the trade of the week, and Andy rides shotgun with him. Then we switch it up just a little bit on you, bring in Dan and Brad. Dan is the founder and CEO of the company. Brad is the chief technical officer. So it's always refreshing to hear from those guys as well. Andy will finish out the 1-hour webinars on Thursday with his trading studio, and I'll ride shotgun with him. And then, of course, on Friday, been doing it for a while now, but it still seems like a new thing to me. Fridays are different because from 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern time, we just have a room that anybody can come into that's needing help. Whether that is fabricating a strategy, just have questions about anything TI related, it's come one, come all. Myself, Steve, Andy, and our newest addition to the team, Sean, is with us as well. So that's what's going on during the week, ladies and gents. I always like to point out.
Don't forget the one-on-ones.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And by the way, the added benefit, to this whole thing here is that, well, the product's getting pretty complex as we keep adding layer and layer and layer for the past over a decade now. And so what we do is we offer you a free one-on-one training session. For myself, Steve, Andy, or Sean, that's a $99 value. So we give that to you for free when you sign up. So don't forget, when you do sign up, go ahead and get in there and schedule that training session, because there's usually, depending on the schedule, 5 to 10 business day wait just to get in the queue and get scheduled. And of course, we always like to point out what has happened to our subscriber base since we introduced our AI named Holly. This is when we launched her. This is what our user base has done thus far and continues to do so. So people responded well to Holly the AI. Of course, we'll be talking about her shortly. And before we get into Holly, let's see, that's next down here. So we are going to talk about the Holly recap today. But before we get in there, just like to always refresh everybody's memory. How's Holly been doing since we brought her online and for 2017? Well, all the way back here is the first day of 2016. Since inception is what you're seeing against the SPY ETF. The gap continues to widen. And I apologize for that noise pollution. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to close the window. One of the pitfalls of being able to keep your windows open here in Southern Cali. But anyway, just kind of wanted to give everybody a peek at, some of the most recent days going down here in this little period of red. It just happened to coincide with our last test drive. But the statistical prevalence in the market, we can't pick that. Holly had a couple of several periods in a row here where she wasn't losing a whole lot, but she wasn't making anything anyway, or making anything either. Then we come up to this area here, and then boom, 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 a nice little run, some stellar performance. And then, of course, up here is today, where Holly finished on her risk off, down 17 cents after struggling most of the day. So kind of just want to give everybody a macro perspective of what's been going on. A period of very nice alpha followed by a little pullback today. So, no harm, no foul. All right, Steve, before we get into the itinerary here, I guess it's about that time that I pass it over to you, and we'll take a look at the broader market perspectives. And
yeah, why not?
All that good stuff, and then we'll get moving along.
All right, there's the familiar screen. Great. Okay, everybody, hello and welcome to my desktop. I have enlarged my daily chart here a little bit to kind of go over some of the market recap, which hasn't really changed in a few years. It's continues to be by the dip, but I continually like to go back to this trend line that was drawn way back in the spiders. It touched here and 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 here, and then we broke through. This is where I got bearish, and we had a fake out to the downside, and then back above, I had to turn my hat back around and get bullish again. Held here, bounced here. So the trend line is still very much intact on these spiders for the S&P 500 tracking stock. And as you can see, we're probably a few standard deviation away or so away from our trend line. We're getting kind of away from it, and at some point we very well could see some sort of a move back to that trend line, which will be very interesting to watch. I'm going to add this level right here as well because of that wick that we had on that day back there. If I zoom in, it'll make a little bit more sense and move it down. Interestingly enough, the support level and the trend line level are kind of intersecting here. So, if we had some quick weakness and a quick downdraft in the market, I would be watching these levels really closely, but we don't have that. We have day after day after day of buy the dip. So today we came in, market gap down a little bit, bought the dip. What did the Dow look like? Gap down, bought the dip. Okay, Qs, NASDAQ, gap down, bought the dip. Nothing really new to report. However, the IWM still is trying to find its footing as the other indexes go to highs and consolidate and then move higher. This IWM can't really seem to get out of its own way. And this green line that was violated back here by these 1, 2, 3 triple support levels, we actually closed below that line on this big red day. We could not get back above it the trailing 4 days. So we've spent 5 days now below a very significant support level around 147.40. And so, for the Russell 2000 watchers, trust me, I think this, I'm going to mark that up with an arrow. I firmly believe this gap very well could become a target in the short term if we do get any weaknesses, but what we've got there is kind of a gap fill, and I think a lot of people agree around 144, including myself, from this congestion back here could be the next level if the IWM does trade through this gap and look for support. But 1 out of 3 indexes are just not really holding the water compared to what the others are doing. So still a bit of a cautionary tale here in the Russell 2000. It just can't really seem to get its sea legs going. But in the other ones, it's as strong as can be. The path of least resistance remains up, and there is no reason for concern or any sort of thinking about going short at these levels because nothing has really shown us in the footprint in the sand here to feel that way, except for the possibility of the lagging IWM. Now, one of the things I've noticed about this market is nothing seems to want to go in the same direction more than 3 days. That's good for a stock. And it's also good for the sector because every stock does belong to a sector. But you know, I thought it was interesting. Last week, the banks, they looked like absolute death. The KBE and the KRE and the XLF. And then today, the darlings of the market. Oh, look, here's the regional banks. Here's the national banks. XLF was also up there as well. So the pass the baton game is still alive and well. You know, just when one sector starts to break down, the baton is handed down and taken. Why am I bringing this up? Well, because again, it's just interesting that nothing really seems to want to go for more than 3 days in this market. Everything seems to be 3 days forward, 2 days back, even on a good uptrend. So, you know, a little bit of a tease for tomorrow night. The trade of the week was NFX, and it was a wonderful looking energy stock coming into the day. The blue line shows us that we did not trigger today. A little bit of gap right there. So if the price had triggered and gone through, that line would be green. So the trade of the week, NFX, is still on the launching pad, so to speak. But I just find it so interesting, you know, again, that what was so strong last week, oil service sector, energy sector, comes in and just throws in a big clunker today. You know, and that's just the market that we have. It's gosh, if I could find it for you, I would. But you know, the GIF of the guy spinning the plates on about 7 sticks, and he's wobbling the sticks, and the plates are spinning, and then one plate starts to wobble and fall, and it gets caught and starts spinning again. And that's really what this market feels like to me. I mean, there's no one sector driving us. It's just pass the baton 3 days, pass the baton 3 days, and it's kind of a slow grind higher with no real fear in the market as of yet. So again, the path of least resistance does remain higher. We'll talk some more about the trade of the week tomorrow, but I thought it was interesting to just kind of point out why it didn't fire. You know, these banks were just on death's door last week, and then they just become resurrected today. So pass the baton to the banks and the financials today, and what was strong last week, oil services and energy, kick them back to the curb and let them dig in and find a higher low. So maybe the trade of the week will trigger at some point. We've got 4 more days for it to kind of dig in and make another assault back at that level. But you know, just a little bit of precursor and tease to what we're going to be talking about tomorrow for the trade of the week. Real quickly before I go, boy, I had a lot of alerts come through today on these washout bounces and the 3-day bounce. A couple of them that I like. If you want to grab a pencil real quickly, there's a lot to choose from, but some of them that stuck out to me was this IBXC for one. Hang on a second, let's just take a look. And this is a bank. Okay, so bank had a good day, but I love the tail. I love the bouncing of the washing out of the stops down here below that level. Keep an eye on this thing, maybe above today's highs. If it trades above today's highs tomorrow, could be one to watch. Found that one was interesting. Another financial, DFS, was found. Oops, DFS was found on the 3-day bounce. And where is it? Let's just so you can see. There is DFS. Another really nice looking bottoming tail, washing out a lot of stops after 4 or 5 days of slaughtering in the financials. Discover Financial Cards put in a nice wick, and above that high today, if it wants to trade above that tomorrow, could be something for you guys to watch. And lastly, there was another one I liked on here, COLB. This one kept on going into the close. Even when I wrote it down, it was back here. So very strong reversal on Columbia Banking. Wouldn't you know it? Funny how that kind of works out with the way the sectors were playing out. So 3 interesting stocks to keep an eye on: IBXC, DFS, Discover Financial Services, and COLB, all coming off of my lately favorite, washout bounce or 3-day bounce type scans. So wanted to share that with you guys as well. So hopefully that made sense, and that's all I've got. And Andy, Jamie, back to you, sir.
You can call me Andy. You can call me Jamie.
Andy.
Always quality stuff, Steve. Thank you very much. Let's see.
All right.
You grabbing this here. Okay.
I see you.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So nice recap from Steve. So today in general, very slippery slope, so to speak. If
Can I
you
pause 1
were,
second? I'm sorry. Yes, William, and anybody else that was tongue-tied listening to me, IBKC, not IBXC. That was my bad. IBKC. Sorry, Jamie.
hey, no worries, no worries. We're just making a statement about the day in general, okay? Because every day is different. Now, if we look at the chart of the market, right? Let's make a little bit more space here. Oops, SPY U, okay. So here we have the SPY on the 5-minute intraday, right? We got the pre-market right here, and then whoosh, okay? Of course, we had the gap down, and then just like a like a well-executed program, boom, 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 let's fill that gap right off the bat, right? So, you know, during this time period, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my indicators, I'm going through my typical routine before the open, I'm looking at my compare counts 15 minutes in, and I'll show you what those look like here. But what I saw in the first 15 minutes, the last thing I really expected was this thing to just keep clicking on up here. But that's what happened. Why did the SPY, you know, just click, 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 fill that gap nice, so nice and clean today? I mean, it's been a topic of conversation all over the place. We'll never know. Just really odd, okay? So just kind of wanted to start the conversation by saying this was just not really that expected. And why wasn't I expecting it, right? Because every morning I have a methodology, right, that I go through, and I attempt to make myself at one with the market and have reasonable expectations of how things may play out, which is also going to tell us, well, how aggressive or non-aggressive should we be? Should we just really sit on hands until we see something of very high quality present itself? All kinds of things, right? So first and foremost, let's talk about our friends compare count windows. All right. Now, these were the readings pulled right off my Twitter page, and I tweet this stuff out 15 minutes sharp into the open. So we can see whether it was the 4 billion or the above 5.4 billion in market cap today, the mega cap stocks. What do we have? Almost, I mean, we can just pretty much call this 50-50 across the board, because yeah, on the 4 billion, and then you get a little higher, maybe a 1% difference there, but 50-50, 51-49, about as close to flat as you can get. And when I see these type of metrics, what it tells me is there's no identifiable institutional heavy selling or buying bias in the opening 15, pretty much flat across the board. So that always tells me, okay, first and foremost, there's probably going to be some good shorts out there. There's probably going to be some good longs out there, but follow through is going to be another issue, right? If we had raging 60% green or 65% green, well, then that's one of the days where I think to myself, whew, today's one of those 2 or 3 days out of the month where boom, boom, boom. Hell, you could buy your initials and probably make money. But more importantly, just the general rule of thumb here, you know, anything below 55% is a bias, but over 55% is even better. And then of course, 60 and 60 plus are the really big days to that bias. But when you see something like this, just tells me, hey, it's going to be pretty shifty today. It's going to be like walking through the fun house. Is the floor slanted or is it going up? I don't know. So those were my expectations 15 minutes in. Of course, 15 minutes in, we were already marching up. Certainly didn't expect to see, I mean, it was just like the algos had complete control today. And at the same time, I wasn't noticing really big volume on the indices. I think they were still, you know, slightly below 1 during that time period. So those are my expectations. Okay, keep your powder dry, only trade the choice setups, and really, really, really watch Holly, okay? So very nimble, going to be longs and shorts possible, and then always second in line for expectations. Had my expectations that it's going to be kind of a shifty day, and then what did our good friend and resident AI Holly have to say about the day? Well, picture tells 1,000 words. Right here we're looking at risk on, risk off. Oh, I'm green or red, I'm green a little bit, and then boom, hits below and never gets back above. So once again, Holly telling us, You know, Jamie, your readings in the compare count, they were pretty accurate. And, you know, here I'm having a hard time finding any purchase from a statistical standpoint. Of course, what do you notice here too? Those of you who watch Holly on a daily basis. Holly showed up with a very small strategy stack today. Of course, I saw this probably Saturday morning as I was tooling around after Holly had completed the number
5 is
run.
very small. That's a
Very
very
small,
small
probably one of
sample.
the smallest compliments we've seen in a very long
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So if only 5 strategies out of a base bank of, it's always moving around a few strategies, but let's just say 40, right? Only 5 make the cut when usually there's about 10, sometimes 12, sometimes even 14 in there. That's just telling you, after this AI did all of its analysis on Friday, just isn't seeing that much, right? And only compounded the issue today when just couldn't catch a break, so to speak. But this is also the AI telling us something. Hey, I'm having trouble today. I'm a highly advanced statistical model. That also tells us mind your P's and Q's. All right. So that's how it played out for me. And then we're going to get into, how Holly performed today. And then I've also got some interesting things to show you guys about, well, when the wind's switching around and it's not that brisk to begin with, and there's going to be good shorts and there's going to be good longs, but there's really not going to be a lot of follow through, we kind of have to go back to basics, and we'll get to that in a minute. But right now, let's just take a look at some of what Holly had to give today. Because even though she was down and struggled all day, of course, when we get used to interacting with her, sometimes we can pluck what's in between risk off and risk on and play that game. And there's nothing on here that tells you, well, this one was good for a trade around, or hopefully getting a little bit more out of risk on or risk off. All right. So Holly had the gap, which always complicate matters for this model. She was more in the canary in the coal mine mode today. Hey, I'm not doing too good. Mind your P's and Q's. But there were 2 things I can point out here. SWCH, there was a trade around possibility, and a little bit of risk on money left over in the halo trade. So let's take a look at switch right at the top of the list here. And of course, Holly calls the buy. Let me just stretch this chart out a little bit. No point in squishing it up. So these are 5-minute candles. Double clicked here, and automatically my chart's going to populate with all of Holly's metrics. The stop loss down here, 1942, entry bar 1967. And of course, this was kind of a strange candle, kind of ebbed and flowed. And then look what we had. We had a quick retrace up here, but before too long, wham, right back down to this line. Now, the interesting thing about this is it got about halfway down to our stop, but not any lower, right? So whether you participated here or whether you looked up later and go, hey, Holly's negative in a position. Now, I remember from the other webinar what Jamie said, anytime I see Holly down in a position, whether the stop loss has been triggered or whether it hasn't, no harm, no foul, and just coming up here and setting a price alert. Simply because the statistical probability is good for the day. Sometimes they'll pass and ebb and flow back through the line several times before they go the way that we think they're going to go. So in this case, whether we had, in this candle or this candle, come up here and set our price alert, or maybe we just wanted to see, okay, it tried to get down there, but is it going to tighten up here? All right. And then maybe we can draw some additional lines to go, okay, well, it's all about timing, right? Sometimes the timing is just a little bit off, but when we see it bounce off this little area here, and notice way back here, that could be some support, starts to climb back up here, stops way down here, and we always have to really pay heed to our hard stops. So at this point in time, it's actually better, or it's actually possible, I should say, to get a better price than Holly. Sometimes that's available. And of course, we can see if you played it on the second or third break, you did have the opportunity to capitalize, whereas Holly's showing risk off here of 0-0 because she got a little too nervous and covered using profit save. So 36 cents in between here, whether you ended up plucking a nickel, a dime, a quarter, anything in between risk off and risk on is the name of the game.
What's
And
that?
then, you know, of course, Holly came up short today, but still two good things to point out. That potential trade around, and then Halo, right? Makes a really nice entry. Let me just compress this a little bit because, yeah, that's, yeah, here's the open here. So stock moves sideways, takes a little leg down here, and then looking for a bounce. Sure looks like it might bounce there. What was it doing on the daily? Oh, well, look, it was kind of butting up against the prior day. We had down here is where it could have went, but the bottom line is Holly calls a pretty dang good entry right here, right at 1809. Don't mind a little sideways movement once we get locked in here. And of course, some days the plays go right up. Today was just not conducive for that type of activity. So just like the prior one, we had a little down pivot, little attempt at the stop, but then 2 and 3 or 4 passes later, it's catching traction. Same type of action here. We're going sideways. This little guy throws us, tries to spook us out, still didn't get down to our stop. I see that wick when that candle closes. That's also a good sign. We know that, you know, unless volume really came into this thing, it's looking like it's pretty stable right there. And then, of course, we get a nice little push up. Why does Holly get out of this one? Well, she manages to stay in the trade for the entire time for looking for a bounce, which was designed 60-minute hold time. Of course, all these guys today that
You
made
could
the
make a
cut
case
were,
for that one that was so close to coming to a reduced risk, you know, because it was just going sideways and that one little dipsy doodle down below the entry. Those are typically when we see those reduced risks, but I'm glad she stuck it out.
Yeah, and then we just get a nice little upturn here, and of course this shaded area perfectly corresponds with the hour in the trade. So we're in a couple of hundred shares down here with Holly because we feel nice and safe after seeing this sideways action. Maybe we can even get a little bit better price than her. So maybe we scaled into a couple of hundred here, and then we get the lift. We see Holly getting out. Always, it's never a bad idea to do a little bit of both with Holly until you get familiar with the process. Risk off is just participating with her on her exits. Basically her abiding by her rule set, which is what we all have to do as traders. Stop loss, profit target, timed hold. So we see Holly take her 14 cents right here. We can go, okay, peel out from my 14, pluck, pluck, thank you very much. I'm going to adjust my stop on my second 100 to whatever you feel comfortable with. Always a good idea when you're taking profits on the first lot, set the stop loss on the second lot, break even. That way you've guaranteed that you will retain profit on that trade. If it continues, you make more. Obviously, if it folds back on you, you're risking that second half. But it's a very practical way to manage your risk. And had you done that in this case, you could have gotten a little bit more. And of course, you know, 14 to 30 is over twice as much. Now, even if you only got an extra 7 or 8 cents, 9 cents, a dime on a annualized basis, monthly basis, that adds up pretty quick. Now, when we're looking at the rest of these trades, other than Halo and SWCH, you know, there's nothing left on the table here. You know, she did well getting out there. I have to eat my foot a little bit here because this is actually a risk-on trade that worked out pretty well because even though it's small dollars, it's still a 4x multiple of what she took, 2 cents versus 8 cents, right? So when we're talking about percentage basis, you know, if these little thin stocks apply or appeal to you, which, you know, let's face it, a lot of people, when they see charts like this, they'll typically just say, yeah, I think I'll wait for the next one. Unless you look at your level 2 or your level 1 and you can see it's just very, well, you can't see the level 1, but most people do have access to level 2, even though it's pretty worthless these days. But you can see the depth of the book. That is the 1+ I'll check off when you're talking about order books. They are semi-useful for looking at depth. So all depends on the depth, but when we see dashes in the chart right there, a lot of the times they're doing hardly any volume in there, 100, 100, so forth and so on. But just wanted to point out the difference between 2 versus 8 here. Then when we look at the rest, not a lot to write home about, you know, on this selling into strength today. This little guy's been making the cut time to time. And, you know, when we pull these up, boy, when he's talking about, or he, she, is talking about selling into strength. Boy, they're not kidding, are they? So GMed right here, Holly tries to fade it right here. It just had a little too much pepper on it, and you know, she quickly gets flushed out of it.
Don't
And
argue
then
with
of course,
stop loss.
exactly, because the
Stop
thing
hit.
would have been upside down almost a buck if you held it to the close. Other than that, her stop losses were keeping her out of trouble today. Just the two things to point out: trade around an SWCH and a little bit of risk on money left in the halo. So that pretty much does it for About Holly today. And of course, tomorrow's a new day. We'll see what happens moving forward. And of course, she's feverishly running the stats right now, and we'll have a whole new batch of strategies tomorrow. All right, so on a day like today where this move in the SPY was really, I think it just caught everybody off guard. I'm sure there's some people that made money. If you did make money in that, congratulations. But based on, you know, what I was talking about earlier, real shady opening compare count metrics, Holly having a hard time, Jamie goes into super conservative mode. Only the prettiest, and only the prettiest with the volume. Volume being the key here, chart pattern being secondary. And, you know, when we have to go back to the basics and rely on, you know, what we refer to as our favorite manual tickers, you know, you'll hear me and Andy talking about how we love accelerated volume, and then if the pattern's right, all the time. And there's always something moving, all right? The key is just being patient until you find the right one. So on the long side today, it was this guy, Roku, which, by the way, if you recall last week, it had just started to do some, you know, pretty amazing stuff. And Steve, I'm all the way back on my history here, but for some reason I thought Roku went back a little further, but I guess not. But we can see what has happened to Roku as of late and with earnings, right? So I'm sitting here today going, well, is anything gonna, you know, am I gonna see anything good? And of course, I'm watching. Bear with me here. Let me find that window. Where did you go? There you are. Okay, hiding down at the bottom. So I'm watching my good friend today, Turbo Up Family, no resistance. And what do I see come through? I see Roku come through here as it starts pecking around right here. All right. Now the volume levels were just off the charts on the relative volume this morning for Roku. I'm like, am I seeing things, right? And this was fluctuating, I don't know, a couple of points here and there. But when it started pecking at this little level right here, the volume was off the hook. The 1 minute volume was kicking too. The 5 minute volume was just insane. And of course, you know, what does it do immediately after that? It takes a little pullback. But it's on my radar, right? And of course, you know, a lot of the times right here, it's always a good idea, you know, hey, sometimes they do go immediately, right? But sometimes they, you know, just like a Holly play, they'll hug this line for a little bit. So whether you threw out a little tester here, which is always one of the wiser things to do, whether a tester lot to you might be 10 shares, might be 50 shares. For some people, it might be 100. So you just go ahead and you're like, hey, I remember what Roku's been doing. I remember what the earnings were from last week. This thing was ripping the other day. So if this thing looks strong and it's got crazy volume and it's busting out on this nice little clean range break here, well, I'm gonna get some skin in the game. So tries here for the first time, takes a little dip, and then wham, as soon as it comes back up here again, it's off to the races. All right. So, you know, one of the I'd say the prettiest, one of the more pretty upside charts today as far as intraday goes to get us in, because we always want to have decent risk on the intraday. And then, of course, once it finally does get through here and get some traction and heads higher, you know, once again, looking to the left, nothing for it to bump its head into. And this thing was just going absolutely nuts today. You know, if we just pull one of these real quick. And that was the lower cap one. So I wonder if we can do configure all here and change the symbol. It won't let me do that here. I was just going to do it and show the Roku only. But for those of you who have this on your desktop today, I think you probably saw it. So we'll just look at the original one here. All right, so when it first started ticking around here, all right, give me my box there. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to cruise back on here. There we go. Okay, so this is when it all started. And of course, go back even a little further. Now we're into the prior day now, aren't we? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
There we go. All right. Well, that's 45 minutes in right there. But I want to say it was coming. It might have been on this one, okay, as well. But in any case, right here, you can see that first volume bar right there. And I don't want to waste all the time by going through the history right now, but it did come through along with a couple of other ones here. So, and that was really the only long one that I saw that was real pretty today. Now, that brings up the next topic here. Here's what we got going on in the overall market. So everybody's thinking, well, maybe there's more upside. I was thinking kind of the same thing too until I saw my metrics, and it was pretty quiet as far as this ticker goes, with the exception of Roku. And then I saw something very interesting. But before I even started watching for short plays today, I did this. So I took my favorite downside ticker, turbo breaks down, right? And I went ahead and said, okay, what are the characteristics I'm seeing in these long plays that go where the smaller time frame volumes are good, and you'll always notice the accompanying relative volume. So I'm like, well, it needs to be, you know, I don't want my ticker going crazy today, everything at the high, or excuse me, a new low. So I went in there and I go, okay, today I don't want to see anything coming through here unless it's doing relative volume of 2. And then it wasn't too long before, okay, why is my chart white?
I don't know why it does that sometimes. There we
Okay.
go. It just takes a refresh.
So in any case, turbo breaks. This comes through. I'm like, GE, huh? Oh, okay, what do we got going on? Oh, what? How? And of course, I don't really follow GE a lot, but when I pulled it up this morning, as it was penetrating this little level right here, I'm thinking to myself, well, good Lord, how much room could GE have? Well, when I pulled this up and I saw, of course, what was happening, I'm like, wow, there must be something brewing with GE. And of course, without going into too much detail and boring everybody, GE's got some weird things going on, you know, underneath the hood. You know, they're a conglomerate of many, many companies, and word on the street is that they've gotten themselves into a pickle on the financial side. You know, derivatives and whatnot. Kind of reminds me of Dell back in '93 when all that happened, and I guess GE thought they're the smartest guys in the room, so we'll dabble in these highly advanced derivatives, and it's looking like that's not working out so well. And that's all I'll speculate on that. But nonetheless, GE, very liquid stock, sporting some crazy relative volume numbers this morning as this little penetration was occurring, and massive volume levels on the 5 and the 1. So, you know, if this is our entry candle here, this is our stop loss area, let's see, 5, 10, 15 right up here. For a nice liquid stock, take that every day. Usually you'd have to kind of figure out where GE might stop, you know, looking at the where the obvious support might be. But we've got GE, everybody knows who it is, breaking down on the intraday, getting us in with a nice, decent entry. And then GE itself now lives in the void. You know, welcome to the abyss, GE. You know, no apparent support, and, you know, never really did recuperate. All right.
I know you had a hard time finding Roku, but Christopher found it, and he's thanking you for that that scan.
Good, good. Yeah, I see that. The turbo up family, right. Never
And
stopped
and
all.
and I'm sorry, but I have to let you know that there are many people requesting the Turbo Family cloud, so you're going to want to drop that into the chat window as well before you forget.
I will, and then also too, I'm going to bestow upon everyone yet another window, which, you know, for the longest time, it's been dormant because, well, conditions weren't right. But let me find it here. I had it, but when I switched my resolution, things kind of got messed up here. So I don't know what I did to make the server mad at me. There we go. Okay. So now you're going to have the turbo up family, no resistance, and now this little guy has actually been spitting out some pretty decent plays today. So same theory, just flip the pattern. Now, of course, just like some of the longs today, some of the shorts will give it to you, and then if you don't take it, they take it back, then they give it back. I mean, classic example was PetQ today. Now, this morning, I saw it come through here. I'm like, oh, PetQ, not the same as pets, right? PetQ hitting lows and breaching, you know, it took its dive into the abyss last Friday for the first time, using this line as a reference. I don't know why I have so many lines on this from the intraday. And then today, a little continuation. So PetQ came through here right as this little pause had been taken, this little sideways pause. So I'm like, you know what? I bet that little thing's going to go. So I set my price alert here, and we got a nice follow through initially. And then, of course, it's the same old game, you know, especially in this market where, you know, you didn't know if you'd have any continuation to the upside or the downside, but it's always, you know, favorable if there's no support to the left, right? So, you know, whether you took your money here or peeled out a half, if you set your stop for break even, you got punched out of that one. And then, of course, all the way back down to a lower low and then ripping all the way back up before the close, right? So keep an eye on PetQ. You know, just because they got frisky with it at the close today, you know, anytime a stock is in the abyss, it could keep on going. And this little guy spit out some other interesting stuff today too. Nice, clean little setups. I mean, hey, Shield, I don't even know if it's borrowable at a lot of places under $5. Maybe, maybe not. But once again, nice, clean intraday setup here, and then a continuation lower. Even though Shield is a smaller dollar stock, it's the pattern that's showing up that's the interesting part. In addition to that little guy being produced, this guy right here, the regular turbo, produced this guy as well, GE and NKTR, were two of the, I guess, maybe the 7 or 8 stocks that came through this that look conducive. NKTR right here as it broke this nice little 5-minute or the 5, 10, 15, 20, 30-minute consolidation area there on high volume. Now NKTR, this is what it did. This looks very similar to that one that Holly tried to step in front of earlier. Well, the reason I found this one is because of this nice little intraday setup here and continuation. Now, of course, when they're hanging out there all by themselves, they can keep on going up, or sometimes they can make regressions down. I mean, looking at this pattern on the daily, I mean, yuck, nobody wants to step in front of that. But see, therein lies the beauty of the nice tight intraday pattern. This gives us confidence and low risk, right? Our risk would be, if you're using a 15-minute look back, then our risk would have been, box had me all weirded out there, okay. Right there, right? Entry candle, 5, 10, 15, nice tight risk area, reward area, significantly larger. And that's just, you know, what we want to see. So even though we saw nice cozy here, a little bit scarier over here, but all we care about is right here. And then of course, whoosh, nice little retrace. So I think that's pretty much it. Let me see here. Roku, GE, NKTR, PetQ, and Shield.
If
And
you've
those are
got
pretty
all those
much,
done, I'm sorry.
from a manual perspective, how did I find these things? Okay. Simple price movement and some volume, right? Simple price movement and volume and a nice comfy intraday pattern. And then, a lot of these guys, if they're coming through here, there may be a little bit of range to contend with to figure out how far down they could go. But if you're dealing with this guy, they'll already be in the abyss. And if you're dealing with this guy, they'll already be into the blue sky territory. So I'll be sure and I'll drop these guys in.
Yes,
Chat here.
please. I promised everybody. A couple people are privately telling me they're having a hard time locating the chat window, and that's okay. For whatever reason, it might not be showing up. I'm not sure. But if you feel like you're missing out on something that's being handed out here in the chat window and you can't access it, just go ahead and email info@trade-ideas.com. Let them know you were in the webinar and you couldn't find the chat window, but you were really looking forward to getting the XYZ setup or the cloud, whatever we were dropping in there, and we'll be happy to accommodate you guys in that way. So I'm sorry to those that can't find the chat window for whatever reason. It may not be there.
I pushed my chat window over to my other monitor so that I could easily find it when it was time to drop my links in.
And now you can't find it?
I now cannot find
your chat window.
My chat window. So
what if you go to View, File Options, and View up top? Is chat window checked, Mr. Jamie?
Let's see. I'm looking right now. Preferences.
File Option, View, Help at the very top. Under View.
Let's see. View. Questions, chat. Yeah, let me deactivate it and reactivate it. Aha, that somehow responded.
Hey, David, you might want to try that if you don't see it. If you do see it in the View menu, but regardless of, if people are having a hard time locating that chat window, don't sweat. info@trade-ideas.com. We'll get you covered. We'll get you the cloud link that you're looking for. Just make sure you're specific in your request when you write into that email.
Okay, there's the one to the downside. And we'll pop this guy to the upside. Okay, those are both officially in there now. Take a little time. Okay, well, we got a little bit of time here, Steve. Should we take a couple of chart questions?
If they're so inclined, we have a couple minutes.
All right. Well, ladies and gents, you heard us. Anybody want to pop a chart up there? We'll take a look.
Always helps to know if you're in it, long or short. You're thinking about it.
Apartments was hitting highs at the close, I believe.
Yes.
And here's the daily on it.
Nice looking daily. I mean, I don't know if I'd chase it up here. I would have rather waited for that nice breakout it had from the congestion over the last 6 or 7 days.
Right.
Definitely a healthy looking chart. Earnings are behind us. Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, you never can tell how long they might want to run. It'll all be contingent upon, hey, finish the day doing pretty decent volume, right? So when you pull this thing up tomorrow and you're thinking about trading it, pay attention to those volume metrics. And
yeah, he says he's been in and he's been out. Somebody else is asking about GM. For a second, I thought they meant GE, and I was laughing, but no, GM. Got it. GM's pretty, there you go, that daily chart. Just adjust that orange line down to the base of that level, and that's going to be your downside. So, I mean, it's got a very definable downside there, and it's also reaching up to maybe even fill that gap as well. So, once it fills that gap after 2 or 3 days of upward movement, remember what I said at the beginning of this episode, stocks and sectors have a funny way of running out of steam after about 3 days, unless, of course, they're in a massive short squeeze, which is one of the reasons I like the short squeeze plays. But, just be aware, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Not a bad looking daily the way it dug in there, and it's probably due for maybe a half a day of more up movement and then maybe a little bit of rest. We'll see. We can do one more and then we'll be done. Let's see, which one do we want to do?
Well, that's CBay right there.
Okay.
Let's see which one looks sexier, NSP or CBay.
CBay had a rough day today. Had earnings 2 days ago, it looks like.
Just coming back down to the bottom.
The pharmaceuticals are tough, man. They can have a crazy mind of their own. That was an ugly day today, definitely in CBay after 2 really nice days before. So you kind of want to. I mean, we're right back on this pivot level here, about $8.30 or so. So you really want to see it hold that $8.32 level, more or less. Let's see.
All right, one quick peek at NSP, and then we'll have to bring Scott in here in just a second.
Nice looking trend. Beautiful looking washout bounce candle there 2 weeks ago. You guys can see that big bottoming tail. I get excited when I see those bottoming tails because what happens after them is usually kind of what you're seeing there. Some nice upward movement as everybody else, the weak hands, got washed out. But here we are again. This thing could be getting a little bit overstretched. It might be time. I don't know what your position is or if you've taken any profits yet, but at any given time, this thing could do the 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, Kansas City shuffle on you.
Indeed, indeed. All right. Very good. So, Scott, if you are ready, sir, we're ready for you.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, just a couple items as we head out the door today. There will be a Trade of the Week webinar tomorrow, so those of you on that list, stay tuned for that invitation. If you're a Interactive Brokerage client, make sure you find out about Brokerage Plus. It'll let you manage your Interactive Brokerage account via Trade Ideas and trade directly from Trade Ideas through it and automate your trading using Trade Ideas strategies. So find out about that by emailing info@trade-ideas.com if you're an Interactive Brokerage client, so stay tuned. We have a podcast. There's a new episode up on Friday, and hopefully you're all subscribers. Just open your favorite podcast app and search for Trade Ideas Podcast and add us as a subscription. Whole bunch of good episodes in the catalog, and check out the newest. There'll be a new one out on Friday, so be sure you're on board. If you want to save money and start using Trade Ideas now, just use the code HOLLYSNAP, all caps. That code is good for this webinar this month. And if you want to download this slide along with some of the other slides, go to the handouts panel on your GoToWebinar interface and go ahead and download that. Actually, it should be popping up right now. I forgot to click go on that a little bit ago, but you can download that. And the Holly Snap code will save 15% off your first month or year of any Trade Ideas subscription, standard or premium, and they all include a full hour of one-on-one training with Steve or Jamie or Andy or Sean. So check that out. If you have any questions, email us info@trade-ideas.com and follow the guys on Twitter. You can get Jamie at QuantBot, Steve Gomez, Today Trader, Dan Merkin, Trade Ideas 1. We also have Trade Ideas and some other ones. Follow us on Facebook and shoot us an email if you have any questions. You can contact Steve or Jamie directly, but the support email is info@trade-ideas.com that goes through our support software. Thanks, Steve and Jamie. We'll get the recording up later on, and everyone will get a notification about where to find it.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for attending today. And we will see you on the flip side, Steve.
I'll see you tomorrow.